Everyone thought the Alpha King rejected his mate because she was weak, but no one knew the truth that would one day shake the entire kingdom apart. The night King Cale Draven publicly cast Selene out of the royal palace, she had already been carrying his child, and before she could whisper the words that would have changed everything forever, the mate bond between them shattered in front of the entire court. 6 years later, while the Alpha King ruled alone with a heart poisoned by regret, the woman he abandoned was surviving deep in the frozen north, secretly raising the heir to his throne, a boy with royal alpha blood powerful enough to start a war. But fate was never finished with them, and the day Cale finally discovered the son he never knew existed would become the beginning of the kingdom's downfall. Long before betrayal destroyed them, Selene had been nothing more than a quiet Omega healer living in the remote mountain village of Black Hollow, a place forgotten by nobles and untouched by palace politics. She spent her days gathering herbs in the snow-covered forests, tending wounded wolves, and avoiding attention because Omegas without family names rarely survive long in powerful territories. Selene understood her place in the world. She was invisible. That was why the arrival of the royal army changed everything. News spread quickly through Black Hollow that Alpha King Cale Draven himself was leading warriors through the northern borders after rogue packs attacked several royal settlements. Fear swept across the village because Cale's name was legendary throughout the kingdom. Some called him a hero. Others called him a monster. He was the youngest Alpha King in history, undefeated in battle and ruthless toward anyone who threatened the crown. Selene expected someone cold and untouchable. What she did not expect was the terrifying moment her wolf awakened the instant she saw him. Cale rode into the village during a brutal snowstorm, his black horse covered in frost, his silver eyes sharp enough to silence an entire crowd. Warriors immediately bowed their heads as he passed, but Selene froze while carrying medicine toward the injured because the pull inside her chest nearly brought her to her knees. Mate. The word echoed through her soul so violently she could barely breathe. Then Cale looked directly at her, and for one dangerous second the entire world seemed to stop moving. Even the Alpha King appeared shaken by the bond snapping into place between them. Selene lowered her gaze immediately, terrified of what this meant. An Omega healer could never belong to a king. But Cale did something unexpected. Instead of walking away, he asked her name. From that moment onward, nothing in either of their lives remained the same. Cale began returning to Black Hollow constantly under excuses that fooled everyone except his closest beta commander. Sometimes he claimed he was inspecting military routes. Other times he insisted he was checking defenses near the border. In reality, he came only to see her. Selene tried keeping her distance at first because she understood how dangerous their connection truly was. The royal court expected Cale to take a noble alpha female as his future queen, someone powerful enough to strengthen alliances between packs and produce heirs worthy of the throne. Selene was an orphaned Omega with no political value whatsoever. But Cale ignored every warning. Slowly, the ruthless king who terrified the kingdom became a completely different man whenever he was near her. He laughed more, smiled more. He sat beside Rivers listening to her stories about mountain life, brought her rare books from the capital because she once admitted she loved reading, and confessed things he had never told another soul. Cale admitted he hated palace politics. He hated how every decision was controlled by fear and power. Most of all, he hated feeling trapped by the crown he inherited after his father's death. Selene became the only place where he could simply exist as a man instead of a king. Over time, the distance between them disappeared completely. Secret meetings turned into stolen nights hidden away in mountain cabins while snowstorms raged outside. Cale promised her that one day he would change the kingdom for them. Selene believed him because when he looked at her, she saw sincerity no one else ever witnessed from the feared Alpha King. Then the bloodshed began. One horrific night, several noble families inside the capital were murdered without warning. Panic exploded throughout the kingdom instantly. Rumors of rebellion spread across every territory, while rival alphas accused one another of conspiracy. The royal council demanded answers, and somehow evidence mysteriously appeared linking the attacks to wolves from Black Hollow. Selene could hardly believe it when soldiers stormed her village accusing innocent families of treason. Cale initially refused to accept the accusations, but the pressure around him became unbearable. The royal council warned him that if he defended Selene publicly, rival pacts would unite against the throne. They claimed the kingdom would collapse in a civil war if the Alpha King chose an Omega tied to traitors over his own people. Day by day, Kale became colder beneath the crushing weight of responsibility, while Selene watched fear slowly consume the man she loved. She begged him to trust her because she knew her village was innocent, but every investigation uncovered more false evidence planted against Black Hollow. The kingdom demanded punishment, and Kale stood trapped between love and duty. Then came the royal gathering that destroyed everything. The grand throne hall overflowed with nobles eager to witness the king's decision. Selene entered the palace terrified but hopeful because she carried a secret capable of changing both their lives forever. She was pregnant. Their child already grew inside her, carrying the powerful royal alpha bloodline. Selene believed once Kale learned the truth, he would finally fight for their family no matter what the court demanded. But before she could speak privately with him, the royal council forced the decision publicly. Noble after noble demanded Kale reject the traitor Omega to protect the kingdom. Selene stood beneath the towering chandeliers trembling while whispers and insults spread throughout the hall. She searched Kale's face desperately, praying the man she loved would choose her. For one brief moment, it seemed he might. Kale's hands clenched at his sides while his wolf raged violently against the rejection. Pain filled his silver eyes as he stared at her. Then Lord Varen, Kale's most trusted advisor, stepped forward and announced that rival pacts were already preparing for war if Selene remained beside the throne. Fear swept through the court instantly. Kale looked around the throne room and saw a kingdom ready to tear itself apart. In that terrible moment, he made the worst mistake of his life. His expression hardened. His voice became cold enough to break her heart before the words even left his mouth. "You are not fit to stand beside a king." The mate rejection struck Selene like death itself. Agony ripped through her soul as the sacred bond connecting them shattered violently inside her chest. Gasps echoed across the throne hall while she collapsed to her knees fighting to breathe. Tears blurred her vision, but worse than the pain was seeing Kale force himself not to run toward her. Selene tried speaking. She tried telling him about the baby, but the heartbreak was too overwhelming. No words came out before darkness swallowed her completely. Later that same night, while storms buried the capital beneath snow, Selene disappeared from the palace forever. By morning, the rejected Omega was gone without a trace, and weeks later reports arrived claiming travelers discovered blood and burned wagons near the northern mountain roads. Everyone assumed Selene had died trying to flee the kingdom. Even Kale believed it. And far away in the frozen wilderness, completely alone and carrying the child of the man who destroyed her, Selene realized she would have to survive not for herself anymore, but for the son who would one day inherit his father's power. For 6 years, the Alpha King ruled the kingdom like a man cursed by his own decisions. And although the war eventually ended and rival pacts finally bowed to the crown, Kale Draven never escaped the memory of the woman he destroyed with his own words. The kingdom saw a powerful ruler sitting on the throne, but behind closed doors Kale had become hollow. He never chose another mate despite relentless pressure from the royal council, and every noblewoman presented to him was dismissed without explanation because his wolf refused to accept anyone except Selene. Many believed the rejected Omega had died years ago in the northern wilderness, but Kale secretly carried the guilt of her death every single day. He replayed that moment in the throne hall endlessly in his mind, the tears in her eyes, the pain in her voice, the way she looked at him right before the bond shattered. Sometimes late at night, he would wake feeling phantom pain in his chest where the mate bond used to exist, as though some part of Selene still haunted him across the distance. Meanwhile, far from the capital, Selene survived in the frozen north where no royal wolf would ever think to search for her. Life there was merciless. Winters killed the weak, food was scarce, and robed wolves roamed the forest constantly. But none of that frightened Selene anymore, because the moment she gave birth to her son, fear stopped mattering. Lucian became her entire world. The boy had inherited Kale's silver eyes and unmistakable alpha instincts from birth, though Selene prayed every day he would never grow into the same ruthless man as his father. Raising him alone was far harder than she ever imagined. Lucian was different from other children. Even as a toddler, His emotions affected the world around him. When he became angry, furniture shook. When he cried, nearby wolves instinctively lowered their heads without understanding why. And whenever he laughed, Celine saw flashes of the man she once loved so desperately that her chest physically ached. Still, despite everything Cale had done, she never poisoned Lucien against his father. The boy only knew that his father was gone. Nothing more. Celine built a quiet life in a hidden northern settlement surrounded by snow-covered forests where exiled wolves and forgotten families survived together far from royal politics. Most villagers assumed Lucien's father died before he was born, and Celine allowed them to believe it because the truth was too dangerous. If the kingdom ever discovered the Alpha King had a secret heir hidden in the north, powerful enemies would come for the boy immediately. For years, Celine successfully concealed Lucien's identity, until the day fate betrayed them both. It happened during the harshest winter storm the North had seen in decades. Lucien, now 6 years old, wandered beyond the village after a group of older boys mocked him for not having a father. Furious and hurt, he chased them deep into the forest before a massive rogue wolf emerged from the trees. The creature was enormous, starving, and completely feral after surviving too many winters alone. The other children froze in terror, but Lucien stepped in front of them instinctively, his small body trembling while the beast lunged toward him. Then something impossible happened. A violent burst of alpha energy exploded from Lucien's body so powerfully that the ground cracked beneath the snow. Golden markings ignited across his skin, while the robed wolf instantly collapsed, whimpering at the child's feet. Every wolf nearby felt the shockwave. Miles away, hidden inside the royal palace, Cale suddenly dropped to one knee during a council meeting as unbearable pain tore through his chest. The room erupted into panic while royal guards rushed toward him, but Cale barely heard them because something far more terrifying consumed his senses. The mate bond. After 6 years of silence, he felt it again. Weak, distant, but alive. Celine was alive. Cale immediately abandoned the council and rode north alone before anyone could stop him. For days, he followed the fate pull of the restored bond through blizzards and frozen forests until he finally reached the hidden northern settlement. The moment he entered the village, every instinct inside him screamed that he was close. Then he saw the boy. Lucien stood near the village gates arguing with older children twice his size. One of them shoved him hard into the snow, and before anyone could react, Lucien growled with pure alpha dominance. The older boys froze instantly. Cale's breath caught in his throat because it was like staring at himself as a child. The same silver eyes, the same stubborn expression, the same terrifying aura hidden beneath innocence. Then Lucien looked directly at him, and Cale knew the truth immediately. That was his son. Before he could move, Celine appeared from one of the nearby cottages carrying firewood. The moment she saw Cale standing there, the color drained from her face completely. For several seconds neither of them spoke. 6 years of pain, betrayal, longing, and heartbreak hung silently between them while snow fell around the village. Cale barely recognized the woman in front of him because life had changed her. The soft healer he once knew was gone. Celine looked stronger now, harder somehow, as though survival itself had reshaped her into someone capable of enduring anything. Lucien noticed the tension instantly and stepped protectively in front of his mother despite being only a child. "Who are you?" he demanded fearlessly. Cale struggled to answer because emotion closed around his throat. Celine recovered first. Her expression turned cold immediately as she grabbed Lucien's hand and ordered him inside. But Cale finally spoke the words he should have said years ago. "He's mine, isn't he?" Celine stopped walking but never turned around. Silence confirmed everything. Cale felt both overwhelming joy and unbearable guilt crash through him simultaneously. He had a son, a child he never knew existed because of his own terrible decision. When Celine finally faced him again, there were tears burning in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "You lost the right to ask about him the moment you rejected us." The word struck Cale harder than any blade. He tried apologizing immediately, tried explaining how he regretted every second of the last 6 years, but Celine refused to let him near her son. She revealed the truth Cale never discovered after she fled the kingdom. The evidence against Black Hollow had been fabricated from the beginning. Her village was innocent. Worse still, after Celine disappeared, Mercenaries attacked the settlement and slaughtered nearly everyone connected to her in order to erase evidence permanently. Someone powerful within the kingdom wanted her dead. Cale realized with horror that the conspiracy stretched far deeper than he imagined. Everything that destroyed them had been carefully orchestrated. Meanwhile, Lucian secretly watched Cale from a distance with endless curiosity. The boy had spent his entire life wondering about his father, and despite Celine's attempts to keep them apart, Lucian found himself drawn toward the mysterious alpha warrior who looked exactly like him. Over the following days, Cale remained in the village under the excuse of protecting them because now that Lucian's powers awakened publicly, enemies would eventually discover the hidden heir existed. Slowly, awkwardly, Cale began bonding with the son he never knew. Lucian challenged him to races through the snow-covered forests, demanded sword lessons, and constantly asked questions about the capital. For the first time in years, Cale experienced genuine happiness. But every joyful moment carried painful guilt beside it, because he could never recover the 6 years he lost. One night, while sitting beside a fire together, Lucian innocently asked the question Cale feared most. "If you're really my father, why didn't you come for us?" Cale could not answer immediately because shame nearly destroyed him. Across the room, Celine quietly looked away, unable to watch his reaction. Before Cale could finally speak, screams erupted outside the village. Wolves burst into the settlement, carrying torches and weapons while arrows rained from the darkness. Mercenaries. Someone had found them. Chaos exploded everywhere as villagers fought desperately to protect their homes. Cale instantly shifted into his massive alpha form and tore through attackers while Celine grabbed Lucian and tried escaping through the forest. But the enemy had planned carefully. Hidden among the mercenaries stood a royal assassin wearing the symbol of Lord Varen, the very advisor Cale trusted most in the kingdom. The assassin smiled coldly before whispering the words that changed everything forever. "The heir must die tonight." Then smoke bombs exploded through the forest, separating Lucian from his parents completely. By the time the fighting ended and the snow finally settled, Lucian was gone. And miles away in the royal capital, Lord Varen stood before the entire kingdom announcing that the Alpha King's secret son had been captured and would be executed publicly at sunrise for threatening the throne. The entire kingdom descended into chaos the moment Lord Varen revealed the existence of the Alpha King's secret heir, because by sunrise every noble house, rival pack, and royal territory was already choosing sides for the war everyone feared was coming. News spread like wildfire across the realm that King Cale Draven had hidden a child born from a rejected mate bond, and for many wolves that revelation was more dangerous than any enemy army. Some believed Lucian was the rightful future king, proof that fate itself had chosen Celine despite her low status as an Omega. Others saw the boy as a threat capable of destroying the kingdom's ancient hierarchy forever. Inside the royal capital, nobles demanded Lucian's immediate execution before rebellion could erupt, while outside the city walls thousands of wolves gathered preparing for battle. But none of them understood the terrifying truth. Cale Draven was no longer fighting for a throne. He was fighting for his family, and that made him far more dangerous than the ruthless king they once feared. As the capital prepared for Lucian's execution, Celine rode beside Cale through the night toward the palace she swore she would never see again. The last time she passed through those gates, she had left broken, rejected, and carrying a child completely alone. Now she returned stronger than ever, no longer the frightened Omega the court once humiliated. Years of surviving in the frozen north had hardened her into someone unrecognizable, and the moment royal guards tried stopping her at the gates, Celine faced them without fear because nothing terrified her anymore except losing her son. Cale watched her silently as they entered the palace together, realizing how badly he underestimated the strength she carried all those years. The woman he once tried protecting had survived impossible suffering without him, and every step through the royal halls reminded Cale how deeply he failed the mate destined for him. Meanwhile, Lord Varen controlled the capital completely. Royal soldiers loyal to him occupied the palace while terrified nobles obeyed his every command, believing the advisor was acting to preserve the kingdom. But hidden beneath Varen's calm exterior was a hatred decades old. As Cale and Celine secretly gathered loyal warriors inside the lower palace tunnels, They finally uncovered the truth behind everything that destroyed their lives. Lord Varen never manipulated the kingdom for power alone. Years earlier, during the war that placed Kael's father on the throne, the royal family massacred Varen's bloodline after accusing them of treason. Varen survived as a child and spent his entire life plotting revenge against the Draven family from within the palace itself. He poisoned Kael's father slowly over several years, manipulated the royal council into fearing Selene, fabricated evidence against Black Hollow, and orchestrated the mate rejection specifically to weaken the royal bloodline emotionally and politically. Lucian's birth ruined his plans completely because the child represented something Varen could never control, a future strong enough to unite the kingdom under a ruler born from both Alpha power and Omega compassion. That was why Lucian had to die publicly. Varen wanted the entire kingdom to watch the Draven bloodline end forever. By dawn, the capital square overflowed with thousands of wolves gathered beneath storm-dark skies for the execution ceremony. Soldiers lined rooftops while nobles watched from elevated balconies above the crowd. At the center of the square, Lucian stood chained before a massive execution platform, bruised but unbroken despite everything he endured. Even surrounded by enemies, the boy carried himself with terrifying courage that reminded everyone of his father. Kael nearly lost control the moment he saw his son imprisoned before the kingdom, but Selene grabbed his arm tightly and forced him to stay hidden until the right moment. Above the square, Lord Varen stepped forward, smiling coldly as silence spread across the crowd. He announced that Lucian was an abomination born from weakness, proof that the royal line had become corrupted by an unworthy Omega. Then he demanded Kael surrender the throne peacefully if he wanted his son spared. The entire kingdom waited for the Alpha King's response. Slowly, Kael emerged from the crowd wearing black armor, stained with blood from battles fought through the night, to reclaim his palace. Gasps echoed everywhere as wolves instinctively lowered their heads before their king. Kael walked toward the execution platform without fear, while royal soldiers surrounded him from every direction. Varen ordered archers to aim at Lucian's heart immediately. "Kneel," Varen commanded, "or the boy dies." For one terrible moment, silence consumed the square completely. Then, to everyone's shock, Kael dropped to one knee before the entire kingdom. Nobles erupted in disbelief, while Selene stared at him in horror. The proud Alpha King who bowed to no one had humbled himself to save his child. But Varen made one fatal mistake. He underestimated Lucian. Seeing his father kneel awakened something ancient inside the boy's blood. Suddenly, the royal Alpha mark burned across Lucian's skin like living fire, while an explosion of power ripped through the square violently enough to crack stone beneath everyone's feet. The chains imprisoning him shattered instantly. Wolves throughout the crowd collapsed under overwhelming Alpha dominance, while even powerful nobles struggled to remain standing. Lucian rose slowly as golden energy surrounded his body, silver eyes glowing with terrifying intensity, identical to Kael's. Every wolf present felt the truth instinctively. The child was the rightful heir to the throne. Chaos erupted immediately afterward. Loyal royal warriors hidden throughout the capital attacked Varen's soldiers, while rival packs turned against one another inside the streets. The execution square became a battlefield drenched in blood and fire. Kael shifted into his massive Alpha form and tore through enemy forces with unstoppable rage, while Selene fought beside him instead of hiding behind him. Years earlier, she had been powerless in this palace, but now she moved through enemies fearlessly, protecting her son with deadly precision. Together, they carved a path toward Lucian while the kingdom collapsed around them. Varen realized too late that fear no longer controlled Kael. Desperate, the advisor revealed his final weapon. Hidden assassins emerged carrying silver blades coated with wolfsbane poison strong enough to kill even an Alpha King. During the battle, one assassin struck Kael directly through the chest while protecting Lucian, and for a horrifying moment, the king collapsed before his family. Selene screamed his name as panic tore through her, but Kael forced himself back to his feet despite blood pouring from the wound, because nothing, not poison, not betrayal, not death itself, would stop him from reaching his son. In the final confrontation atop the burning execution platform, Varen tried killing Lucian personally after realizing the kingdom would never accept his rule now. But before the blade could strike, Kale stepped between them and snapped Varen's wrist with brutal force. The two men fought savagely while flames consumed the platform around them. Varen screamed that Kale's family deserved destruction, that love made kings weak, that rejecting Selene should have broken the Draven bloodline forever. But Kale finally understood the truth. Love had never weakened him. Fear had, and fear was what cost him 6 years with the people who mattered most. With the entire kingdom watching, Kale executed Varen publicly and ended the conspiracy that destroyed countless innocent lives. Silence fell across the capital afterward as smoke drifted through the ruined square. Then Kale turned toward Selene and Lucian standing together beside the crowd. Bloodied, exhausted, and barely standing, the Alpha King dropped to one knee again, but this time willingly. "Rejecting you was the greatest mistake of my life," he said hoarsely before the entire kingdom. "No crown, no law, and no council will ever come before my mate and my son again." For several seconds, Selene simply stared at him, while memories of heartbreak and loss collided against the man standing before her now. The king she once loved had changed completely. Not because power forced him to change, but because losing his family taught him what truly mattered. Slowly, Selene walked toward him through the silent crowd. Then, before the entire kingdom, she took his hand. Months later, peace finally returned to the realm under a new rule unlike anything the kingdom had ever known. Kale destroyed the old laws that allowed political interference between mates, while Selene helped create protections for Omegas and lower-ranking wolves long abused by powerful packs. The kingdom slowly transformed under their leadership, not through fear, but through unity. Selene became queen not because she was chosen by nobles, but because the people respected the strength of the woman who survived alone and still chose compassion after everything she endured. And Lucian grew into the future king the realm desperately needed, one born from both alpha strength and a mother's resilience. Years after the rejection that nearly destroyed them all, Selene walked through the palace halls once more, but this time, she was not alone. Lucian ran ahead laughing while Kale wrapped an arm around her waist gently. The Alpha King looked down at the woman he almost lost forever and whispered the words he should have said from the very beginning. "You carried our son alone when I failed you. I'll spend the rest of my life earning the family I nearly destroyed." And for the first time in many years, Selene smiled without pain, because the story that began with rejection finally ended with love strong enough to heal a kingdom.